What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Fantasy Files second channel, Fantasy Files Reacts, where we take a break from fantasy books and topics to talk about movies, TV shows, and video games. As always, I'm your host, Spencer, joined by a very special guest. I have here Nick Henderson, host of the 4-Player podcast and contributor for Dexter Daily. More about that in a second, but dude, thank you for joining me, Nick. This is awesome. I'm really happy to have you here.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. This is exciting. I've been looking for an opportunity to talk about The Last of Us on the podcast. So
Yeah,
thank you.
definitely. Yeah, there's so much to talk about with this series. I can't wait to get into it. And speaking of which, yeah, today we're going to be chatting about episodes 5 and 6 of The Last of Us on HBO. So if you're not caught up, now is your time to jump ship. We'll also be spoiling both video games, especially with this video episode. So you also have that to consider. I'm assuming you've played both games, right, Nick?
Yes.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure.
Very much so.
Okay. But yeah, if that's all fine with you guys and you're sticking around, welcome to the channel. We appreciate it very much when you like and subscribe, especially with this being our second channel and all trying to get it off the ground. But yeah, with that out of the way, let's introduce our guest and talk some Last of Us, and I imagine a little bit of Dexter too.
Ooh.
So Nick, first of all, thank you for joining me. This is like I've been wanting to talk to you on a podcast for so long because I was following we were talking before the show. I was following your content for Dexter when New Blood
Hmm.
came out, and just everything you posted, I was like, this guy loves Dexter, and Dexter is like my number one favorite show. So I was so happy to find
Wonderful.
someone else. Yeah.
Yeah, I do live and breathe Dexter for
Yeah.
sure, for sure. But yeah, thank you so much for having me. This is exciting.
Yeah.
And I'll take any opportunity I can find to talk about Dexter and The Last of Us. So this
For
works
sure.
out wonderfully.
Well, you've done a lot of really cool stuff. You have this podcast that I haven't listened to yet. It's called the 4-Player podcast. So I'd love to hear about what that is, but you've also gotten to do so much, like you're a writer for the Dexter Daily. I'd love to hear more about that. You've gone on forgive me, was it Dissecting Dexter?
Dissecting Dexter is a podcast that
Yeah,
I've been listening to since the days of the original show.
right.
I think I found that show around late show like season 6 or something
Okay.
like that, and it just became one of my favorite podcasts to listen to. And Gareth, the guy who does that show, is just one of the nicest people in the world, and he's so welcoming and has just wonderful community to talk about Dexter. So uh, and as soon as they announced New Blood, he just kind of like
Yeah.
brought it
Let's
back up, and I
go.
was like, yes, let's go.
Yeah.
So I've been a guest on there a few times. So yeah,
Yeah, were you on the episode with the showrunner?
I was not on the episode
Okay.
with Scott Reynolds, but he did do a show where it was a one-on-one interview with him, and he
Yeah.
did take questions and comments and stuff from the community that he could pose to him and stuff. I have
Okay.
met Scott Reynolds.
Oh
I
yeah.
went to the New Blood premiere in New York City,
Yeah.
which was
What a dream, dude.
yeah, that whole thing came about in just the weirdest, most unexpected way imaginable, but one of the coolest experiences I've ever had, for sure.
Yeah. Was Michael C.
Um,
Hall there?
he was, in fact, he was sitting in the row in front of me, but at the
Oh my.
opposite end. Like I
Okay.
was kind of in the middle of the theater on the left side, and he was in the row in front of me, but at the far right end.
Okay.
He had like an entourage. I think
Yeah, I bet.
he had to be able to like leave at a second's notice, so he was sitting on the very very end. So I got like a blurry photo of him like pointing across the hall, because they did, before they aired the episode, they were introducing people from the cast, and he obviously stood up and was waving and whatnot. So I got like a really blurry photo of him, which was funny.
Okay.
um
Nice.
I eventually, because it was him and Jennifer Carpenter,
Yeah.
and it was like 5 or 6 of the cast members. So there's Dokes and Masuka and Harry. They were all there, and they went to a fan expo in Dallas. And I just said, I didn't get to meet him at the premiere. Obviously, that was a difficult task in and of itself. So I said, screw it, and I I paid the money and I drove to the expo and I went and I shook his hand and I said hi to him and got his autograph and whatnot at the expo. So I have met the man, just
Yeah.
not at the premiere, not
Okay.
organically, I
Yeah.
suppose.
Right. Okay, cool. Yeah, that premiere when I saw you tweeting about that, I'm like, dude, what an incredible thing. Like that is so cool. And you have a picture with Jennifer Carpenter, I think.
She is so nice. She's like one of the nicest people. I mean,
Really?
I've met her for like all of 10 seconds, or not 10. It was
Right.
probably like a minute.
Yeah.
But just super nice. And she like complimented my wife's dress, and they were
Oh,
like chat.
cool.
I was like, hello, I'm right here.
Yeah,
You know,
I'm the fan.
it was a great moment. It was actually really funny. We were standing in line. I was like going up to meet her, and like 5 or 6, because they had like a table set up with like all these like photos you could pick up and have them sign if you didn't bring something with you. So they had all these photos of Jennifer Carpenter laid out, and there was one of her from The Exorcism of Emily Rose. If you've seen that movie, there's that famous shot of her like bent backwards, whatever, and like we're like
Oh.
about to walk up. I'm about to like shake her hand, and my wife looks down and sees the picture, and she goes, "You're Emily Rose." Like that's like the first thing she said to her, and we, it was a hilarious moment.
That's great. So yeah, do you want to talk about did we talk about the Dexter Daily or did we go past that?
The Dexter Daily thing was kind of connected to the premiere. Essentially, more or less, I tweet about Dexter a lot, like
Yeah.
a lot, and I caught John. He's the guy who runs DexterDaily.com. He caught wind of it, and they were getting ready to, we were approaching the onset of New Blood, and he reached out to me because he asked me if I wanted to help him write content for the site first,
Okay.
because he was like, it's just there's so much of it. He runs the site all by himself. He does an amazing job, and he said, so it started like, would you like to help me write like recaps of all the episodes as they
Oh
air? And
yeah.
I was like, yes, please. So we kind of bonded over that, and we were talking back and forth a lot, and then he basically told me that he got Showtime reached out to him because DexterDaily.com is like one of the biggest, if not the
Wow.
biggest, Dexter like fan site on the internet, and that
Okay.
Showtime sent him an invite to the premiere, but he couldn't accept it because he's overseas, and
Oh.
it was like a week before the premiere was supposed to happen. He's like, there's no way I can figure out how to get there. And I was like, I don't know if you're telling me this because you like want me to like ask or whatever. And I was like, I feel terrible even bringing this up, man. But if you need me to go in your stead, I will do it. I will fall on that sword. And he was like, well, actually, that would be amazing. Let me see if I can get them to switch the invite to your
Oh,
name. And
sick.
sure enough, Showtime did it. And next thing you know,
You're at the
it was like
premiere.
5 days before the premiere. It was like kind of I mean, not kind of, it was in the midst of COVID, and
Yeah.
I hadn't been on a plane since pre-COVID, and I was just like, I don't. Oh, and I was like, and I'm getting married next month. Like, this is a huge risk if I,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I was like, and my wife was really encouraging. She's like, you need to do this. It's like a once in a
Yeah.
lifetime opportunity. So like, I
Absolutely.
took off work. I like booked the flight like 2 days before we are supposed to go, and just I did it. I was on the ground in New York City for less than 24 hours.
Yeah.
I was in and out, but it was just amazing. Got to watch the premiere episode about a week before it aired on Showtime with the cast and crew,
Yeah.
and a bunch of other fans and people who are connected to the show. So very, very cool experience.
But all right, well, before we get into talking about The Last of Us, do you want to plug 4 Player Podcast and talk about what that is a little bit?
Yeah, I'll be quick. 4 Player Podcast. I've been doing this show for about 12 years now with 5 or 6 of my closest friends here in Austin, and we were actually one of the first people to stream on Twitch. Back when we started, it was actually Justin TV,
Oh,
and we've been with them ever since. And more or less, it's quite simple. It's just a podcast about video games, and we're all friends, so we kind of feed off that that energy, and we talk about all the games we're playing. We talk about news in the industry. We do like top 3 lists. We do
yeah.
whatever topic kind of strikes our fancy. But we've been doing the show more or less every week since 2008, I think.
Wow.
Um, so if you want to check it out, it's at 4playernetwork.com. That's the number 4playernetwork.com.
Okay.
You can follow us on Twitter at 4Player Podcast. And if you want to follow me, I'm on Twitter at your host Nick.
Awesome.
So let's leave
Okay.
it at
Yeah,
that.
I'm definitely gonna have to check that out. I'm a big fan of Kind of Funny. Do you watch Kind of Funny?
I listen to Kind of Funny Games daily. Almost, I don't have a ton of time to listen to podcasts, but
Yeah,
Kind of Funny Games daily is great because it's short, digestible, and there's something every day. So
right.
yeah, I do love listening to some of their content for sure.
Nice. Do you guys have a certain console that you guys kind of focus on, or is it
Uh,
everything?
we're pretty much everything from PC to PlayStation, Nintendo, Xbox. We talk about we're a variety show, so we talk about almost everything. I would say the things that you're probably not going to hear about on our show are sports games. There's not going to be a lot of racing game talk, although occasionally if something special comes along, you know what I mean.
Okay.
But outside of those two things, we play everything from like the smallest cool little indie project all the way up to the biggest AAA games. And one thing I will say we do every year, and we've been doing this probably for 7 or 8 years now, is at the end of the year we kind of cap off every year with our personal top 10 lists.
Nice.
um, so we do a top 10 video where we get to talk about our favorite games of the year. So my top 10 games of 2022 is out, so check
Okay.
that out. It's on our YouTube channel,
Sweet.
and whatnot. But that's just something we like to kind of cap off the year with, and that's one of our traditions, I would say. So
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna have to tune into this. I'll subscribe after this.
yeah. Oh, yeah. I should probably mention, since we do record these live on Twitch, if you want to tune in, it's twitch.tv/4player podcast, but it's 4player podcast, all spelled out. So like FOUR player
Oh, okay.
podcast. And that's because when we first started, it was on Justin TV and they didn't allow numbers in
Oh.
their URLs. That has since changed and it has fucked us and it's like we can't change it now.
Right.
We're like we're Twitch partners. Like if we wanted to change something, we basically had to start from scratch. Like
Oh,
not happening.
whoa, wow.
So yeah, everything that we do is like the number 4player podcast, except for that.
Okay.
So
Okay, cool.
really
Well,
annoying. Keeps me
I'll
up at night.
yeah, I'll have the Twitch and YouTube and all that linked below for you guys at home as well. If
Awesome,
you
much
want to
appreciated. I'll be
check
sure to
it out.
pimp this show too on our next episode
Awesome.
too. So
Thanks, man.
mhm.
All right. Well, since we're talking about video games, let's get into it. Let's talk about The Last of Us. And I kind of want to know just like a brief history of your history with the video games. Is this
Mhm.
like a favorite series of yours? And did you enjoy the second one?
The Last of Us, I would say. So we did our top 10 games of all time fairly
Mhm.
recently. And The Last of Us, for me, after having played part two, The Last of Us is in my like top three. In fact, I think it was my number three. I love this series. I adore the series. I played part two on launch
Yeah.
weekend. I started that game. I remember because I took it, came out on a Friday. I took Friday off,
Mhm.
started at like 8 a.m. on Friday, and
Yeah.
I took breaks to pretty much sleep, eat, go to the bathroom, all the usual stuff, and
Yeah.
I finished that game at like 11:30 p.m. on Sunday night. Um,
Wow.
and it was one of the most memorable gaming experiences I personally have ever had. I adore that game.
Yeah.
I know it is a very divisive game,
Yeah.
but it is a story that I love. It is a story that I treasure. Part two included. I think personally is brilliant. I know I'm probably going to get some shit for that, but I think
Sure.
part two is brilliant. But yeah, I adore the series. Part one is it's a game that, like, I think I do agree with people that part one, it ends in such a way that it was perfect.
Right.
Part two didn't need to exist, and it was a huge risk making a
Yeah.
part two, but I think they fucking nailed it.
Yeah.
Um, so short answer, yes, I adore this. I adore this game, and I adored part two. That was my game of the
Yeah.
year that year for sure.
Yeah, I think I fall more on your side than some of the other divisive opinions about The Last of Us 2. I understand why people don't like it, and I definitely had my issues with it.
Hmm.
And by the way, for everybody, spoilers now. So if you haven't,
We're gonna spoil the shit
yeah,
out of this.
yeah. So if you haven't played, then get out of here. But yeah, like taking over as Abby halfway through, I was like, I don't like this. And even, you know, I don't think I ever quite came around on Abby, but by the end of the game, I was like, okay, like I get it. Like I see what they're doing here. I like this. I'm having fun. This is a good time. But I would have rather Abby not been playable. You know what I mean?
Fair enough. I think I super respect that game. Take however you feel about Abby out of the picture for a
Sure.
second. Just think about like the
Yeah.
creative audacity that they had was that was that you want to talk about creatives taking risks
Yeah.
with something that's established.
Yeah.
That is how you do it. Like
Yeah.
they completely turned expectation on its head.
Yeah.
And brace yourselves, everybody, especially if you're watching The Last of Us on HBO and you've never played the game, you don't know what's coming. They've already greenlit season 2. They've already confirmed that they're going to be adapting part 2
Yeah.
in season 2. So history is going to repeat itself, and everybody who is watching this for the first time is about to experience what everybody in the gaming industry had to
Yeah.
experience with the backlash.
Yeah.
But I applaud them for sticking to their guns. I don't think they've
Yeah.
ever, even amidst all the chaos of the backlash to part 2, like they have stuck to their guns. They are proud of what they made. They are proud of the character, and I think that's really I respect the shit out of that.
Yeah.
Um, so
Yeah. I
it's gonna be
I
interesting.
Yeah. Man, when I say The Last of Us, including part 2, is a piece of art, you touched on it there. Exactly what I mean by that is, you play as Ellie and then they force you to switch to Abby after this horrible thing that's happened because they are trying to make you feel an emotion. They're trying to convey a certain feeling and a certain story, and that is art. Like they know you don't want to play as Abby. They know that in that
They drag
moment.
you kicking and screaming into
Yes.
that, and I'll tell you what, they drag you kicking and screaming into that, and myself included. I was a little hesitant at
Yeah.
first, but I came around on it maybe faster than a lot of people did.
Okay.
But I'll tell you what, by the end of that game, I felt for both of these characters,
Mm,
both Ellie and Abby.
yeah.
And I thought the way the story, because The Last of Us has, it has this like, especially when you look at the first one and how it ended, it has this like kind of bittersweet ending that is just,
Yeah.
it leaves you feeling like good, but also
Yeah.
kind of like yucky.
Right.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
For sure.
And people who haven't seen the end of this, who are about to, they're about to have all the feelings.
Yeah.
Um, they with part 2, they like, I'm even like scared to say it out loud because then it makes it real for the show, because they're gonna do the thing that everybody was very upset about that
Yeah.
happens very early on in The Last of Us Part 2.
Yeah.
I hesitate to even say it out loud. So these people who are like loving this show, they're like, "Oh my god, Joel and Ellie, I fucking love it!" Like, they get ready.
Yeah.
It's gonna hurt.
Oh,
It's gonna hurt. Um, but
it's gonna hurt
but
so
like
much.
the story, like the undercurrent of the story, the through line of the whole thing is about breaking a cycle of violence and
Yeah.
revenge. It's resisting the urge to like resort to your like most violent tendencies amidst the chaos of like an apocalypse, right?
Right.
And and Neil Druckmann, the game director and the showrunner, or one of the co-showrunner of the HBO show, has said many times that, like, The Last of Us Part 1 and Part 2 is a story about love,
Yeah.
and it is. And The Last of Us 2 is a very, very dark story,
Yeah.
but at the end, it's about love, and I
Right.
I think that's beautiful. That in and of
Right.
itself is beautiful. So I think they
Yeah.
nailed that aspect of it, because I was a wreck when I
Yeah.
finished Last of Us Part 2, but in a good way.
Yeah. Yeah. The
So
The Last of Us Part 2 is interesting because for many reasons, but it is so dark. And like you mentioned, the first game, it has like these really lighthearted moments. And like,
mhm.
even though it is like kind of a dark game, it has these moments of levity and this beautiful relationship between Joel and Ellie, and kind of like this father daughter thing that like grows and grows. And then by the end, you get to that and you're like, man, I get it. Like, I understand why he did that. But then you get to Last of Us 2, and first of all, I think it's brilliant that they have you play as Ellie. Like that is the obvious evolution of
Right.
the sequel, right? Is to play as Ellie. Um, and you just see the absolute depravity of the human condition, like
Oh yeah.
the absolute
Worst of the worst.
darkness. Oh my god. And
You
that
want to?
game,
Oh, I just had this thought. I don't know why this has never occurred to me,
uh,
but like The Last of Us Part Two is literally the epitome of the theme of the entire Last of Us, which they drive into you in The Last of Us Part One over and over and over again, which is when you're lost in the darkness, look for the light. That is literally
mm,
The Last of Us Part Two. She is lost in the darkness, and it's about looking for the light. And if you want to look at it in the terms of like Joel and Ellie and the effect that Joel has on Ellie, it's like the ultimate like this is a story about Joel becoming a father figure again to Ellie
right.
and the impact that he has on her even after his death.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's so weird. So
It's
yeah,
hard to say it out loud.
I don't want to spoil. I don't want to ruin this for anybody. Maybe you should bleep that out. I don't know, but you know, the end when you finally get through all that just horrific shit at the end,
Yeah.
Joel is the one who saves her,
Yeah.
even despite the fact that he is long
Gone.
gone.
Yeah.
And that I think is that's what it means to be. In a lot of ways, that's what it means to be a parent. I'm saying this as someone who is not currently a parent, but like
Sure.
what I love about this series is that it 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 says a lot about what it means to be a parent. I think it teaches people about what the importance of being a parent and the impact you have as a parent, and
Yeah.
that is the ultimate impact, being able to stay with her and have a profound impact on her
Yeah.
long after he's gone.
That's true.
And that's what I love about The Last of Us Part 2. Holy shit. Oh man,
Yeah,
this story is so good.
yeah, it's such a good series. And you know, kind of what I was thinking about The Last of Us 2 was, yes, there is that lasting effect that he has on her, but I love that. I don't know if you know what grimdark is. It's like a subgenre of fantasy books that are
Heard the
very
term. I'm not like intimately familiar with it, but I've definitely
okay.
heard the term. Yeah.
It basically means like a world that is like it's a book that contains a world that is without hope, and
Yeah.
it is just like really, really dark, and everybody is just kind of like The Last of Us.
There's
Like
no redeeming qualities.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so I'm really into that. And so I really liked how The Last of Us 2 committed to there is not going to be a happy ending. Like
Hey,
there
not in the traditional sense.
not
You're
in the
right.
traditional sense, yeah.
Because I
But
would still say the end of The Last of Us Part 2 is hopeful.
you think so?
Hopeful might be, I mean, it is kind of bleak,
Yeah.
and it's certainly violent,
Yeah.
but when you think about like kind of the last shot of that game with Ellie leaving the farmhouse and you
Yeah.
don't really know where she's going or what she's doing, you can kind of like form your
Yeah.
own theories about what
So
she's
that
doing. But depending on how you choose to look at it, it might be hopeful. It might be like she's going to go back to Jackson and try and reconnect with Dina and all this stuff. Like, or you could look at it and be like, she has given up and she is walking into the forest to die. Like, who the hell knows? But they leave
interesting.
it with that. They leave it with they don't
Yeah.
tell you one way or the other, which I think is cool.
Yeah, I'd love real quick just to get your idea, like how you took that ending. Because for me, I when she walked into the woods, I was like, oh, it's over for her. Like she is going to be
Mm.
a hermit somewhere, and like she's realized that she's hurt everyone around her time and time again, and she's like going off to be by herself forever. And
I
so
think
I'm curious what how you took it, because
well,
you could take it both ways for sure, without a doubt.
I mean the kind of the through line that they follow through is this just never ending quest for vengeance against Abby,
Yeah.
and in the end she finally decides she's got to break the cycle. She's got to stop. She puts down. She lets her go,
Yeah.
and then she comes back home to the farmhouse and Dina's gone and everything. So like to me it seemed like she had an epiphany at the end and she realized Joel wouldn't have wanted me to do this,
Mm.
and this is never going to end if I follow through with this. So she does the right thing. She does what she thinks. I think she thinks Joel would want her to ultimately do, which is let it
Yeah.
go.
Right.
And she goes home and she realizes everybody's gone, and then she leaves. And my interpretation of that was she's come this far. She has made a change in herself. She has taking a step in the right direction. It's time to follow through with that.
Hmm.
So to me, it was like she's gonna go fix things. She's gonna go
Okay.
make things right.
Nice.
And honestly, maybe that's why I love this game and some people hate it, because maybe some
Yeah.
people just feel like that is the darkest, most oppressive shit I've ever seen in my life. What the hell? And maybe that's just the way, which is fine. There's
Yeah.
no, I don't, I love that it's open to interpretation,
Yeah.
um, which I think is what makes it really interesting narratively. So
Yeah. No, that's cool.
I'll be really interested to see what they do in the Last of Us show.
Yeah.
I'm also really
Yeah.
interested to see if they're going to try and split that game into 2 seasons, because I don't think they could
Yes.
tell that story comfortably in 1 season of television.
So I do want to talk about exactly that here in just a second, but while we're
Mhm.
talking about the game, do you think there will be a Last of Us 3?
I think in the business of video games, things rarely completely die, especially when they're financial successes.
Yeah.
I do think, I mean, Naughty Dog's stance on this has always been, if we can find the right story to tell, we're gonna tell it.
Yeah.
But like they're being coy about it, and
Yeah.
there's rumors that it's already in development. There's rumors that
Hmm.
they're not currently working on it. They're focusing on a multiplayer Last of Us game right now, which they're going to talk
Okay.
about later this year. Um, do
See,
I think
I,
it's going
I
to
haven't even
happen?
heard about that.
Yeah. They announced it loosely like 6 months or so ago. They showed concept art for it and said we'll have
Oh,
more to talk
cool.
about later.
Nice.
Because there was a lot of people that loved the multiplayer mode in that first game, and the second game didn't have that, so a lot of people were really upset about that. So now they're working on a standalone, like large scale, like multiplayer game set in the universe, which could be really cool.
Okay.
But do I think The Last of Us Part 3 is going to happen? I think it's inevitable,
Yeah.
but I do believe them when they say, I don't think not. I trust Naughty Dog enough that I do think if they are not confident in the story, I don't think they'll make it. I think they'll
That
move on to something else. But I didn't think they were going to find a good story to tell after one. I was
right.
very much like, don't ruin this, Naughty Dog, don't,
Right.
because the
I
first game
know.
ended so well. It
I
ended
know.
so beautifully, and I think they surprised me.
Yeah.
And if they could do it once, they could do it again. We live in an age of where everything's a trilogy, and
Right.
we have these characters, Abby and Lev. The third game could just be about them.
Yeah.
Maybe we have passed.
I
Maybe
would
we've
hope
officially
not.
passed the torch. I mean, I'm just
Yeah.
saying, like, there's a number of ways you could go.
Right.
Because I'm wondering, is Ellie's story done? It could be.
I
Maybe The Last
hope
of Us Part
not.
3 is not even related to the story at all. Maybe it's just a completely new thing set in the universe. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I don't think the franchise is done by any means of any stretch of the imagination. What that looks like,
Sure.
I don't know.
Yeah.
But
I,
I
I
do think part one and part two exist uh, beautifully. And if they
yeah.
never touch it again, I would be fine with that. But
Yeah.
do I want them to? Yes.
Yeah.
Also,
Tentatively.
after the thing they introduced in episode 2 of the show with the fungal network,
Yeah.
that's a thing that doesn't exist in the game.
Right.
And the first thought I had was, that's fucking cool.
Yeah.
That should be in a game, because I'm thinking about like all like the gameplay mechanics you could make with
Right.
the fungal network, and I'm like, I almost want them to make a third game just so they could use that.
Right. Yeah, for
Um,
sure.
but we'll see.
Yeah, I really hope we get a third game at some point, and I hope it is Ellie. I would love for them to give her just like a happy ending and just have it kind of like all kind of squared away and then go
Ooh.
on with the rest of the franchise. But
Ellie as a mother, because I
yeah.
mean, ooh, like flash forward, and I can't remember the name of the child that they adopt from
Oh, I
Jesse.
can't remember either.
But they had her and Dina essentially have a child at the end
Yeah.
of that game. So like, if they flash forward far enough, Ellie could literally be in Joel's position and
Right.
try. And that, I haven't thought about that before. That could
Yeah.
be really interesting.
That'd be cool. But one thing that I always have respected about Neil Druckmann is right around the time we were starting to get announcements and stuff for the Last of Us 2. I listened to quite a few podcasts that Neil Druckmann and Troy Baker were on,
Mm-hmm.
and they told this story numerous times, and they sound really, really sincere about it. And Neil was like, I told everybody that I absolutely would not make a part 2 unless I was positive I had just a banging story for it. Like
Yeah.
I had to have the perfect story in order for me to touch this at all. And so I really trust that if he were going into part 3, it would be
Hmm.
something where he's like, I believe in the story. Like I know that this is gonna work
Right.
out. So
Yeah. No, you know, depending on who you ask, some people like to give Neil Druckmann shit, and I think a lot of it has to do with mostly like business practices things, right?
mm,
Because there's a lot of controversy around crunch at studios and stuff, and which is obviously a terrible thing. And there was a lot of that
sure.
kind of surrounding the development of The Last of Us. So I hope they fucking nail that shit down and
Yeah.
figure it out. They need to fix that. But as a creative, I think Neil Druckmann is I love listening to Neil Druckmann talk about The Last of Us,
Yeah.
and I believe him when he says that. Now, it would be concerning if it was like The Last of Us Part 3 is coming, and then Neil Druckmann like departs the studio. Like then
Yeah.
I'd be
Oh.
like, okay, that's not a good
Mm.
sign because that makes it sound like studio heads were like, you have to make this game, and he's
Right.
like, I don't want to, and they're like, then get out. Like if
Right.
that was to happen, I'd be concerned. But as long as he's there steering the ship, I'd believe him. I think that, you know, because they did the Uncharted series, and they did 4 games, 5 games technically. So they did 4 games, and they ended that story in a really kind of concrete way. And everybody asks, like, "Are you gonna go back and make another Uncharted?" And he's always been like, I don't think so.
Yeah.
As far as I'm concerned, that story's done."
Right.
Um, and and there hasn't been really any indication that that's gonna change.
Yeah.
So when I hear him talk about the future of The Last of Us as a franchise, I trust him. Whatever he says, I'm like, I kind of believe him. You know
Right.
what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
So
Well, we should probably talk about the show.
yeah, yeah, let's do
let's
that.
uh let's talk about the show a bit. And I want to touch on something you mentioned earlier. I believe you were talking about part 2 in particular, but I'm also curious for the first game. Do you like I feel like everybody has this idea, and I don't know if it's been posted somewhere or if it
Mhm.
was something they announced, but everybody has this idea that the first season is going to be the first game. And
Yes.
I'm thinking that they're going to like wouldn't like at this rate aren't they doing 2 seasons for the first game, I would think.
No, the this season is going to tell the complete story of. I'm pretty sure they have said that pretty conclusively, and
Oh, okay.
also just from like picking up like context clues, if you've been following like behind the scenes stuff, and like all the episode titles are out, and if you look at it, even if you look at like at the very beginning of the season, they do that like this season on The Last of Us, they do that montage, right?
Right.
You can very specifically see the scene of Joel creeping through the hospital with a gun
Oh.
on the end, and I'm like, yeah. So like we have three
Okay.
episodes left, and we know next week is Left Behind. The one
Yeah.
after that's going to be David and the Cannibals, and the one right after that is they're going to be in. Why can I not remember what city it is? They're going to be at the they're going to arrive at the Fireflies, and
Right.
all that shit's going to go down.
So is
Um,
there so real quick, it's
mhm,
been I haven't played the first game since it like first came out,
mhm,
and I'm replaying it now, but I'm not even to where Henry comes in.
gotcha.
So I can't remember what they're skipping and what they're not. If
Mhm.
they do Left Behind next episode and then the cannibals and then the hospital is the next one, are what are they skipping there? Is there stuff
Not
I'm
much actually.
really? Okay.
That first game is actually um,
Pretty short.
especially compared to the second one. It's about a third of it. Like that second game is about 3 times longer than the
Long.
first one.
Yeah.
And because they break the story up into seasons, there's a lot of time jumps. So, and if you're go back and think about the Left Behind, which is what we're getting next week, that story
Right.
was told, like, even though it came out after the full game was already out, it was injected into the middle of the story, and it was like, this is so it's the story of Ellie going out trying to find medicine for Joel because he's trying to heal him back to health after getting
Right.
impaled, right? So she's looking for medicine, and she ends up going to a mall, and while she's in the mall, she's having flashbacks to her time with Riley, which is where we found out how she got bit. So like that, all that happened, and then
Okay.
after all that stuff kind of rolls right into the cannibals. And then as soon as the cannibal thing's over, it like jump. There's like another kind of time jump. It's to spring, and they're like literally coming up on the hospital. So
Okay.
we are. I mean, it is happening a little fast,
Right.
kind of just in terms of like how they've paced the season out. I kind of wish there was a full 10 episodes, maybe to
Yeah.
kind of let it breathe a little bit, because we do see a lot of this happen. This happens a lot with TV shows where like they have a story they want to tell, but they're trying to tell it in a very specific set of episodes, and sometimes they kind of race for the end.
Yeah.
I'm a little concerned. I hope they don't do
Yeah.
that, because it would suck to stumble on that last episode, because that last episode's super important.
It's
Um,
9, right? They're doing 9 episodes?
they're doing 9, but they did
Okay.
say that the first episode was originally going to be 2 episodes,
Oh.
but they didn't like, because this is a new show and they're trying to get people on board,
Yeah.
people who have never played the game. They were originally going to end it. I'm trying to remember where they said they were going to end it. I think they were going to end it when Sarah dies. Like, so it's like the first
Oh,
episode was going to be just the past,
that
but
wouldn't
they
have
didn't.
hooked anybody.
They didn't want to leave people going like, "What the fuck?" They
Yeah.
wanted people to like have that like
Yeah.
carrot, right? So like they stretched it out, and that's why that episode's like an hour and a half long or
Right.
longer.
I
Um,
I I think the first episode gave you everything you need to know. You know that this like apocalypse happened, you know about like the fungal infection, and you know about these things, and then the hook at the end, you find out that she's been bitten but she hasn't gotten sick.
yeah,
And so I think that
and you
that
see glimpses of
yeah,
Joel's like fatherly instincts kind of starting to kick in,
right,
and you start to see like the potential these two characters have,
right.
which I think is super obviously super important to like pulling people through this story.
Yeah.
So they wanted to have Joel and Ellie together. I think by the end of that first episode, so they combined those what was 2 episodes into one. So that's why
Yeah,
we have a 9 episode season. Um,
right.
but I kind of wish maybe they would have done that anyways, and then had another episode for
Yeah.
episode 10.
Yeah,
But
why not do 10? I don't understand
the
some of these showrunner, or I guess maybe it's not even the showrunner, but the production companies doing these like 8 episode seasons, 9 episode seasons. It's like,
mhm.
let's get back to having like 14 episodes in a season. You know what I mean? Come
Yeah,
on.
I do think a lot of it has to do with this is as far as TV goes, this is a new franchise. So they
Yeah.
don't know if this is going to be successful. It could have been a flop, or it could have been their next Game of Thrones. It
Right.
definitely seems like it's their next Game of Thrones,
Yeah,
which
dude.
whew, didn't see that coming, but
So
man,
happy.
that was not on my bingo card, but I love it.
Do you
Um,
think do you think that they'll, after the second game, do you think they'll keep going and tell other spin-off stories?
I think I saw an interview with Neil Druckmann where he said they have
No.
no intention of going
Okay.
beyond whatever exists in the games. So
Good.
if they make a
Okay.
part 3, but like they're obviously not going to do that before we catch up, and they're not going to like stop
Yeah.
making the show and then pick it up again in 6 years or 7 years or whatever after they get another game
Right.
out. I have a feeling it's going to end, but that's not necessarily going to stop HBO from being like, let's do spin-offs and like tell other
Right.
stories set in the universe, which that could be cool. It just might
Yeah.
not be about Joel and Ellie.
Right.
I mean, honestly, it's a universe that has not been fully explored. This story is
Yeah.
almost entirely focused on these two characters.
Right.
So, who's to say what's going to happen after? But we are going to get at least through part 2.
Right. Yeah.
So,
Okay. So I want to pick your brain a little bit before we get into the 2 episodes that we're specifically talking about today.
mhm.
What do you are you happy with the show overall as it relates to the video game? Like what do you think of the actors, the casting?
I'm very happy with it so far. In fact, it's when they first announced it, my instinct was like, "Oh my god, it's one of my favorite games of all time. Please be good, please be good."
Yeah.
And it's good. And I think Craig Mazin, who did Chernobyl, has a
Yeah.
really keen sense for storytelling,
Yeah.
and I think it's coming across here. I think it's great to see Neil Druckmann so involved, because obviously he's bridging the gap and kind of like seeing those two kind of mesh together and tell this story together is really cool.
Yeah.
And I think the show so far has done a really good job of recognizing that. And I think a lot of video game adaptations stumble here because they're acknowledging up front this is not a video game.
Yeah.
The way you tell a story is totally different in this medium, and
Mhm.
they've recognized that, and they've made choices, you know,
To
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 that,
reflect that. Yeah.
to reflect that. And in most cases, I think it's paid off very well.
Yeah.
Um, this last episode that we're going to talk about, episode 6, I think might be my favorite episode of the whole season.
Yep. Same.
so far. As far as actors go,
Yeah,
I think, especially after episode 6, I think Pedro Pascal is
he's the best.
he is that episode. This Pedro Pascal had me practically in tears twice in this episode.
Yep.
And I think Bella Ramsey as Ellie. Uh, I was a little hesitant about her casting at first, but
Hmm.
she has become super comfortable in Ellie's shoes over time.
Yeah.
And it was around episode 3 or so, or you don't get to see a ton of Ellie in episode 3, but episode 4, honestly, I think is where I really started to like feel the impact of these two as a
Right. A
unit, as
unit.
a which was great to see play out. And this last episode especially sealed the deal for me. Like, I am completely sold on
Yep.
Joel and Ellie as a team, and as them, like, neither one of them wanting to admit that they love each other, and that they, like, she sees him as a dad and he sees her as a daughter, but neither one of
Right.
them want to admit it. And
Yeah.
that's the magic of The Last of Us. Like, and it always has been.
Yeah.
So I'm really digging it. And outside of those two, I think Gabriel Luna is great as Tommy.
Yeah.
We don't get to see nearly enough of him, but he should show up in part 2,
Yeah.
or in season 2.
Yeah.
And I can't. I'm forgetting her name. Is it Anna Torv? Is that her name? Who played Tess?
Oh, I
Uh,
don't know. I don't know the actress's name.
she was really, 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 really good. In fact, I liked her. Tess in this show way more
Better
than I
than the
ever liked her
game.
in the game.
Yeah.
Um,
Same.
and we get to meet Maria in this episode, which is Tommy's wife. And I think she's great, but we don't see a ton of her this
Right.
season. So yeah, like, so far I'm on board.
Yeah.
I've really dug all the casting and the creative decisions for the most part. There's a
Yeah.
few minor stumbles, but nothing that
Right.
I would say like ruins the show or like
Right.
makes me see it as inferior to the game. I just think it's another great way to experience the story. And by the way, I am watching this show almost weekly, uh,
Yeah.
with my wife, who's played the games, but
Oh, okay. Cool.
with two really good friends as well who have never played the games.
Oh, okay.
So like watching last night's episode with them was really cool, because
Yeah.
they're just like, oh my god, what the hell? Like, and she, like, they didn't see the thing, the impalement coming at the end at all, and they were just
Yeah.
like, what the fuck? And I was like,
Yeah.
dude, you have just wait, just
You no
wait. Oh my god, just
idea.
wait. I'm like, this. I cannot wait to see their reaction to the ending, because I
I
do think
know.
this is one of the most beautiful endings to any
Yeah.
game
It's
or story in general. So
it's incredible. I hope they do it like almost shot for shot with that ending.
yeah.
But I did want to talk about casting for a minute, just
Mhm.
real quick. I've talked about it before on the show, so I'll be really brief.
Mhm.
But I really had my doubts about both Pedro Pascal and
Mhm.
Bella Ramsey. Like when they said that Pedro was going to be Joel, I was like,
I was like, huh?
yeah, I was like, okay. I'm like, maybe. Like, I don't know. And I really hadn't seen him in a lot. I had seen him in like The Mandalorian, of course, and that's really the only place I
And you
really
barely even get to see him.
yeah,
You know what I mean?
exactly. And so I was like, what do you mean he's Joel? But right from episode 1, literally from the first scene, I was like, oh, he's Joel.
Yeah.
And it was perfect. And he's like, he is how I picture Joel now, like for
Yeah.
sure. It's so good. And especially going back and playing through the game again,
Mhm.
man, he has a lot of his like mannerisms and just the way that he says certain things. It's really, really similar. However, I was really nervous about Bella Ramsey right from the
Mhm.
beginning, and I still am. I
Still
still
are, huh?
yeah, I still do not think that she is the best choice for Ellie, especially now that I'm going back through the game. I'm like, "Oh, Ellie is so different in the game. This is not really the Ellie from the game in most ways."
I think they're starting to make those.
They're
I I,
starting to
th-
cross them a little
I
bit.
think this episode in particular, episode 6,
Yeah.
is the one where I was like, okay, that's Ellie. Like,
Right.
I can see this is the one where to me she struck all the right chords as
Yeah.
Ellie.
That's fair.
Um, they start doing, like, the pun book was really great,
Yeah.
and and even if she's not necessarily going for the exact same thing as Ellie from the game, I do buy her as like I am totally invested in like her and Joel. Like Joel is like
Right.
wanting to protect her. Like she's someone to be protected.
Yeah.
And now one thing I will say, and this is where maybe some people's nervousness comes from. I'm not sure, but especially if you played the second game, she's a very different person in the second. Not different
Yeah.
person, but she carries herself very differently in the second game.
Yeah.
And Bella I'm not saying Bella Ramsey can't do it, but she's gonna have to, she's gonna have to really step into a totally different pair of shoes
Yeah.
to do that second season. Um, but I do think she can pull it off.
Do you
And
do you think that they would choose a different actress for season 2 because
I
she's
don't think
much
so.
older?
I don't think so. And especially when you hear, especially, I don't know if you've listened to the companion podcasts that they've been doing.
Mm-mm.
It's really good. It's hosted by Troy Baker and Neil
Oh
Druckmann
shoot.
and Craig Mazin together, and it's been great every week. Um,
Oh, okay.
but hearing them talk about Bella Ramsey, like Craig Mazin this week referred to Bella Ramsey as like he's like she's amazing, and I see her almost as like an adopted daughter. I was like, there's no way he's gonna let anybody recast her, and
Yeah.
I honestly wouldn't, because that when that kind of thing happens, it can be super distracting.
Hmm.
So I mean, here's the thing: I think in real life, Bella Ramsey is 19, and she is playing a 14-year-old.
Right.
In The Last of Us Part Two, she's supposed to be like 20 or something.
Yeah.
So she'll actually be her age when we see her again. And I'm not sure how much of this is like kind of movie magic where they're trying to make her like feel
Yeah.
younger. So she's gonna be a different like physical presence
Yeah.
in that second season. And honestly,
Right.
I'm really excited to see how they approach that.
Yeah.
Um, because she is a mean motherfucker in the
Yeah.
second game. But you see glimpses of that, I think,
Yeah.
in this show.
Yeah.
But it's going to be really interesting to see how they do it.
For sure.
But also, there's nothing stopping them from kind of tweaking the story, tweaking the presentation a little bit to kind of like fit Bella Ramsey
Yeah.
more. You know what I mean? And I'm not opposed to that as long as like the core through line of the story
Yeah.
remains the same.
I
So
I'm kind of like, and I've heard a lot of other people echo this. I'm kind of in the camp where it's like, don't touch the first game at all. Give me all of the first game perfectly. And then if you want to mess around with the second game a little bit,
take some more creative
I'm
liberties.
yeah, I'm more okay with that, I think.
I mean, honestly, I think they're probably going to have to take some more creative liberties.
Yeah.
If for no other reason than it's just a massive game.
Yeah.
Um, that I don't think they can do everything in The Last of Us Part One. I don't think they can do everything in Part Two. It's just too big of a game, and too many moving parts, too many set pieces, too much. It's a much bigger thing. And also, I don't really subscribe typically to the ideology that like if you're going to adapt something, you should adapt it like one for one. I think there are cases where it works better that way. I think this works very well.
Yeah.
I'm shocked at how close they
I
are mirroring the
know.
game. Like shocked.
Dude.
And also continuously surprised by the ways they find to subvert my expectations while also not changing anything that like is central to the story of
Right.
that first game. It's crazy.
They
Um,
they literally nailed it with this show. Like this is exactly what I want. They give us extra stuff, but they don't
mhm.
take away from what we love. And for a long time, and still kind of, I'm still kind of cynical, but for a long time, I was like, don't fucking adapt anything because you
Yeah.
guys are doing it wrong. Like, dude,
There are
when
ways to do it. There are
yeah,
definitely ways to do it. And
dude,
I'm not
when
like this show is kind of a miracle. I'm gonna be honest.
right? Oh yeah, dude, for real.
So
Yeah, when Wheel of Time happened, the Wheel of Time TV show, I don't
yeah,
know if you saw it.
I have a friend who's trying. In fact, the friend I'm watching The Last of Us with, he's been trying to get me to watch Wheel of Time for sometimes. He's a big fan of the books,
Okay.
but he seems a little iffy on the show. Is that kind of what I'm picking up on? Like the
Yeah,
adaptation is not
dude,
great, or
the show, I hated the show with a
mm,
fiery passion.
oof.
I hated that show because I love the books.
I
And
think he's trying to get me to watch the show because he thinks he knows the chances of me finding the time to read the books are pretty slim. So he's like,
yeah, that's
if
fair.
nothing else, watch the show.
Right.
Um, so
That's fair.
you know,
Yeah,
maybe I should just read the book. I don't know. But
you should.
talking about adaptations, like Dexter is an adaptation. It's an
Yeah.
adaptation of a series of books. I've read all those books. I'm gonna be honest. I'm
Are
not
they
a huge
good?
fan. I'm
Okay,
not a
yeah.
huge. I mean, a lot of that is, first of all, I will always be thankful to Jeff Lindsay for creating the character,
Oh yeah.
and so much of what Showtime did in the adaptation to create Michael C. Hall's version of Dexter is thanks to what he did in the books. But the books are totally different, and I almost don't like any of the creative decisions made in the books personally.
Okay.
But they chose to adapt it because the character and the concept is brilliant.
Right.
So they took that concept and they ran with it in their own direction, and I love that direction way more than. And I hope he never hears that you say this, because I do. I will always be thankful to Jeff Lindsay for creating that character, but
Yeah.
I'm just not a fan of what the kind of story he wanted to tell with that character. So
Well, before we go on for 2 hours, I know we're already running a little bit long, and if you have to dip out at any time, please let me know and we'll close it up. But I just wanted to get your thoughts on episode 5.
Mhm.
So what we've talked a bit about
Endure and Survive. That's the name of the episode, I believe, right?
yeah.
I think.
See, I don't even know the episode titles. I should probably look that up before doing a podcast.
There's like, I'm gonna be honest. I follow a lot of like Twitter accounts that like follow like production and stuff of shows that I'm obsessed with or whatever. So like every week they're like, the title of this episode is this. This is the runtime.
Okay.
So like I
Nice.
probably look into that shit more than I should.
Okay.
uh, it was the whole, the Dexter thing just got me on that, and
Right.
now it's like spread to other things. But episode 5 is weird because it's like the tail end of a 2-part story that started in in episode 4.
Yeah.
And it's Kathleen seems to be kind of the thing that most people seem kind of wishy-washy on. I think I love the actress they picked for her. This is like the biggest diversion, I think, aside from the Bill and Frank episode. That was a pretty big diversion that paid off extremely well. But Kathleen is maybe the biggest departure outside of that.
Yeah.
And it's not that I'm not sold on that storyline. I could see where they were going,
Right.
and I can see why they did it. It just didn't seem like it had as much meat to it as
Yeah.
like kind of everything around it.
Yeah. Kathleen is the kind of villain that you would get in one of the like early seasons of The Walking Dead, and she would
Mhm.
she would have like a whole arc, you know?
Yeah.
And so to try to do it in 2 episodes here, but also not really pack a lot into her character, I just really wasn't sold on Kathleen at all, but I really like the idea. Like this is
Mhm.
exactly what I like about someone doing an adaptation this way, because in the game they even say it in the after the episode thing. This was just like a militia that is just
Mhm.
attacking you, like they're like in the
Right. There's
game.
almost no context. This
Yeah,
was their attempt to add context
right.
to the militia that's hunting them
And I
in the game.
I think that's brilliant. I love that. I love giving personality to these random, just like kind of nameless encounters that you have
Mhm.
in the game. I think that's an absolutely great idea. However, Kathleen, I'm just like, I'm just not vibing with her character for whatever reason. And I if I really thought about it, I could probably put my finger on it, but like there's just something about it that didn't feel like it had substance. It didn't feel like there was anything that made me sympathetic to her.
Yeah.
Even
Uh,
even the whole like tragedy of like her brother dying and everything. Like,
we never got to meet the brother, so it's hard to
yeah,
really connect with it. And
yeah,
they were trying, like they had to find because this is an example of them like taking what happened in the game and trying to kind of condense these stories and tie certain events that were not necessarily connected in the game together so they can fit these things in like a single episode, right? So
right.
like the raider attack where they crash into the
Store,
laundromat, whatever, is a
yeah,
huge set piece in the game. It's an
right,
amazing moment, but that moment, those raiders that attack them have almost nothing. They have nothing to do with Henry and Sam. They have nothing to do with the militia. In fact, they're just assholes out there who are raiding and pillaging people,
right,
right?
yeah,
So like they were, as they're like pacing out the season, they're like, okay, this is the episode where we're going to introduce Henry and Sam. Episode 5 is where we're going to continue the story of Henry and Sam, and we're going to end with the big dramatic like Henry and Sam death
Right.
moment, right? But like they have to tie those things together, and they're also pulling out all these gameplay sequences, right? Because you don't have
Yeah.
gameplay in the show. So like, how do we tie these things together? Okay, well, let's make the laundromat thing tied to the militia. So
Right.
we fast forwarded to the militia, and what can we do to tie the militia to Henry and Sam and
Yeah.
the laundromat? And it's like, okay, well, you can see how they like started to kind of piece these things together,
Right. Right.
and I totally get what they were doing.
Hmm.
Um, but you're right. Like I don't know if I ever sympathize with Kathleen. I don't know if I felt much when she died,
Yeah.
even though that was a really cool
That was a
scene.
really good scene. That was a
That was a
really good
really cool
scene.
fucking moment.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, I love that actress. I think she's great. I think
Yeah.
it was an inspired choice because like it's not probably the first person you would think to cast in that role. So I applaud
Right.
them for that.
Yeah.
But yeah, but here's the thing: like, I wasn't super feeling the Kathleen stuff, but it didn't like offend me or ruin
Right.
anything for me. And
No,
then
for
they get
sure.
to this, and then they get to the amazing like cul-de-sac with the sniper and all
Oh,
the infected, and it's just like I was like, Kathleen, who? Like,
yeah.
this is
Let's
amazing.
go.
Like,
Yeah. So for episode 5, I was really lukewarm on it until that scene, and I started to warm up to it when they're in the tunnels and Joel is sitting down with Henry and Ellie and Sam are playing, and I'm
mhm.
like, okay, I'm starting to feel a little like sympathetic for Henry and Sam, and
That scene too was like kind of an homage to a bigger moment in the game because they had this whole sewer sequence, right? And they had this community that had like died underground, or whatever. They couldn't do
yeah,
all that, but they're like, let's do it still, kind of with this like little intimate moment
homage, yeah,
as an homage. And people who play the game are like, I know where they are. And like, there's
right,
even that moment where he like kind of like Joel's looking at the wall and he sees the drawing, the kid's drawing on the wall, and it says Ish, the story. Because like if you in the game you find all these notes and you read about the story of Ish, and
oh.
like that was an Easter egg. So people who play the game are like, I see, I'm making the connections. This is
Yeah,
good.
man, I really wish I could play the game fast enough to keep up with some of these things because I'm definitely, without a doubt, gonna do a rewatch of the
Mhm.
show
Oh yeah, me too, for
once
sure.
I get through the game. Matter of fact, I really want to rewatch just episode 6 like
Yeah,
tonight.
I
But
actually might do that tomorrow or the next day because it's very good.
yeah. But yeah, so for a long time on episode 5, I wasn't really feeling it. And by the way, these notes that you see here, these are notes that I was taking on my phone as I was watching the
Oh,
episode.
stream of consciousness.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you're just
So,
yeah,
so you can see where it changes here, where it's like, oh, this just got a lot more interesting.
yeah.
And they're getting sniped, and Joel runs in there and he finds the guy and he's holding the gun to him. He's like, please
I
don't.
There's a
And
really great
oh
conversation about the
god.
sniper moment, and it's also they make, if you listen to the companion podcast, they make a really great connection between the sniper moment with Joel and the moment in episode 6 where he has the drag out, not drag out fight, but like the confrontation with Ellie in the bedroom,
Yeah.
and he says stop, like don't say another word about Sarah, kind of thing,
Yeah.
because like there's this is all Joel trying to say, like trying to be a better person for Ellie,
Yeah.
because he feels like a father now, and he's like, don't make me kill you.
Yeah.
I don't want to do that. I don't want to be that person anymore because I have her
Her.
in
Yeah.
my life. And like,
Ugh.
and just and when you fast forward and you have that conversation in the bedroom, and he says stop, he's basically saying don't talk about Sarah because I'm not going to be held responsible for like the reaction I have, and I don't want to have that reaction to you because
Right.
I care about you, and I don't make me do this, like don't make me have this conversation because that's not going to end well.
Right.
And like, oh, it's just so good. Like
So good.
when they reveal the sniper is just some old dude,
Yeah. Yeah.
uh, which is totally different from the game. And he was just like, "Please, dude, don't make me kill you."
Yeah.
That was like little tiny, like a small change like that, which like the scene still plays out very similarly to the game,
Yeah.
and you kind of you think you know what to expect when he gets up, when he kind of circles around, like flanks the sniper, and then you get in there and it's just this old guy.
Yeah.
And I was like, holy shit, what a brilliant change.
Yeah. What a brilliant idea.
I loved it.
Yeah. I also kind of love how we're getting these two throughout this first season. We're getting these two through lines. We're seeing, this theme of love throughout the whole thing, but we're also seeing these little snippets of revenge. And I feel
Mm-hmm.
like that's kind of, foreshadowing to the second game, because the second game is very much about revenge.
So much foreshadowing in
It,
episode 6, by the way.
yes,
Holy
yes.
shit.
But I love this. I love this moment with Kathleen where, um, she's on this revenge kick, and we see
Mm-hmm.
that consuming her. But then she also kind of mentions something that made me think of Joel a little bit. Tell me if you agree with this. She says, "Did you ever think maybe he was supposed to die?" And this is when she's talking to Henry about
Right.
Sam, I believe.
Yeah.
And she's like, "Did you ever think that maybe he was supposed to die? Do you think the whole world revolves around him? This is what happens when you mess with fate." And it's kind of interesting because if you
Yes.
flip it, you see like that's how Joel thinks in the end. Like the whole world does revolve around Ellie for that moment. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's all he can think about.
I mean, his
Um,
whole world revolved around Sarah, and he can
yeah,
and like this whole kind of arc, the arc of the game too, like
yeah,
from the moment he picks up Ellie to the moment we get to the finale, is him trying to like violently resist letting that in, right?
yeah,
Let it like he already feels it. You can
yeah,
already tell he feels the world revolves around Ellie, but he won't
yeah,
admit it, and he's trying like hell. Like that's why he's trying to get rid of her in episode 6. Why he's trying to
yeah,
pass her off to Tommy. He's like I can't do this.
yeah,
This is getting way too heavy
yeah.
for me. Um,
For real.
but yeah,
Um,
you're right. That was absolutely foreshadowing. And
yeah,
honestly, if Kathleen did nothing else but kind of provide some really clever foreshadowing to like what's to come,
yeah,
that's cool. Like
yeah. That's
she
awesome.
at that point she's not useless. She did serve some kind of purpose.
Yeah,
Also, I really like going back to episode 4 a little bit. Like they planted the seed of what something underground, right? And that's not in the game.
yeah,
And you're going, okay, well that's obviously got to be infected
yeah,
under the ground. What the fuck? And then you kind of like forget about it, and then
yeah,
you get to the cul-de-sac, and I was like,
dude.
if you
That,
think back to like the trailer, right? Because
mhm,
in the original trailer they showed the bloater coming out of the ground, and I was like, when
yeah,
is that gonna happen? Like,
right.
I was like I was watching the cul-de-sac kind of play out. I see the truck crash into the house and explode, and I was like, there was fire, and that's oh
Oh,
no,
yeah, yeah.
that was
That
well
was
played,
so
well
good,
played.
dude. That whole scene had me like, it was one of those things where you're sitting down watching the episode and then you get up and
Yeah,
you're yelling at the TV like, "Go, go!" Like,
I was watching that. I was watching that with my wife and like I said, my two friends who have never played the game or whatever. And I'm sitting here thinking like I'm pretty comfortable. Like I know what the fuck's for the most part it's gonna happen in the story.
right,
And the cool thing about the show is that like you're not running into infected every 5 seconds. Like
right,
it's kind of a treat when you see an infected or something related to the infection.
yeah,
So you get kind of comfortable because they space it out really well, and then all of a sudden
you get hundreds of them.
it's like yeah, not only hundreds, but I like they're moving fucking fast, and I'm like,
Yeah,
oh my god, I forgot. Like part of me forgot they like on in the game they're called runners, and I
yeah,
completely forgot about runners. I was like, oh shit, this is horrifying.
yeah,
And then the bloater comes out, and I was like, oh
yeah.
my god, I
Oh my god.
like part of me was like, is a bloater like a kind of thing that translates well to a TV show? And then I was like, yo, yeah, it does.
Yeah, it
And you know
does.
what that makes me think of?
What?
Makes me wonder. They've got to do the Rat King.
Yes. Oh,
They've got
dude.
to do the Rat King.
Yes, that is going to be so awesome. Oh my god. That
That
is going to be
is
so cool.
that is an unforgettable moment, and it is horrifying.
Oh, it's
And
so scary.
and here's the brilliant thing: it happens in season 2, and you know they're going to have a bigger budget in season 2 because now they've got that HBO money, and HBO knows this shit is making money.
Yeah.
So like they're going to give them all like, you want to make a Rat King? Go for it. It's going
Yeah.
to be great. I can already tell you it's going to happen.
Oh, it's so
Yeah,
good.
that whole thing, and all we haven't talked about the little girl wearing the Blues Clues shirt, the clicker in the
Yes.
car.
Oh, that was so creepy.
just another example. I was like, I thought I knew what was going to happen, because like there is a moment in the game where like in the cul-de-sac there's infected running up the street, right? And he's like,
Yeah.
run and whatever. But like this shit was intense
Yeah.
and the most unexpected way. And it was just like, for people who were like, where are all the zombies? Like, here you go.
Yeah.
Here they are.
Yeah.
So
Oh, dude, it was
and when the bloater kills Perry, he does it just like the bloater kills in the game. Like if you let yourself get captured by a bloater, they like rip you basically apart at the neck. Like he
yeah.
decapitates him with his. And I was like, that was nuts.
Yeah.
Also, I'm not sure if you were aware, but the actor who plays, I think his name is Perry, her like
He's
right hand
Tommy.
man, yeah, Tommy from the game.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah, it's super cool.
so that it's cool. It's cool seeing, if you follow the game and you kind of know who is involved, whatever. It's cool to see them using the same actors too. Like a lot of the main characters, I'm pretty sure Ashley Johnson and Troy Baker are going to make a cameo
I was gonna
in
ask
the
you
show.
when do you think they come in?
I have a suspicion on both of them actually, and these are things that you can, because they show Ashley Johnson in one of the trailers, and I'm pretty sure
Oh,
you see her for a split second, and if
okay.
you know what Ashley Johnson looks like, you're kind of like, is that Ashley Johnson? I'm pretty sure she's playing Ellie's mother,
Oh,
which
interesting.
she's not in the game. So, but like looks like there's a scene of someone giving birth, and I'm like, that's Ashley Johnson. That's probably going to be a flashback to like Ellie's mother or something.
Interesting.
And then Troy Baker, I don't know for sure, but I have a feeling he's probably going to show up in the cannibal camp somewhere.
Okay.
Either that or the hospital.
Yeah. Oh, yeah,
I
what
mean,
if
there's
he's
not
the
many choices
doctor?
left.
What if he's one of the doctors?
Oh, what if
Oh
he's the
my
doctor?
yeah. What
You
if
mean
he's
you mean you,
Abby's
you
dad?
mean what if he's Abby's dad?
Yeah.
Oh
Oh my
man,
god. And speaking of the Rat King, do you think that we'll have season 1 and then season 2 as, Ellie's part of uh game 2,
mm-hmm.
and then the end of season 2 it'll switch over to Abby, and then
it
season 3 will be Abby's storyline.
it could be. It could
Yeah.
be. My only concern with that would be for the people who are not necessarily on board for Abby, who are, the same people. Like I said, we're going to have history is going to repeat itself here. So
Yeah.
you're going to have a lot of people who are not on board with like suddenly not following Joel and Ellie.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering if to avoid that, it's gonna be like a flip flop, like an episode, like every episode they switch back and forth.
Yeah,
That way, it's like you're
that makes
never
more sense.
100% away from Ellie.
Right. Yeah.
But like, that is maybe one of the most interesting questions from a creative standpoint that they're going to have to address in season 2. So
Yeah.
very, very interested to see how they're going to approach that.
Yeah. Yeah, episode 5 won me over by the end. The whole Henry Sam thing, when she put her blood on his bite, I was like, "Wait."
Another subtle change.
I was like, "No, are they going to have her heal him with her blood? What is going on?"
She's going to try,
And
because
then
it was cool. It was brilliant because you think about it. She's like a 14-year-old girl.
yeah, why
She
wouldn't
has this
she?
like she has this thing in her head. She's been told that her blood is special, and she cares about Sam. It makes perfect sense. Like a child's outlook on the world would be, you're infected. I have just the thing,
Yeah.
and I'm gonna try and help you. And that's the kind of person Ellie is.
Yeah.
And it obviously doesn't work, but I totally get the instinct that she would, like in the game. She never even finds out he's infected until it's way too late.
Yeah.
So like this was a really clever change that kind of like made the scene hit a little different, but just as hard as it
Right.
does in the game. And also, Sam tells her that he's infected, and then he tells her asks her to stay up with him because he's scared, and she
Yeah.
promises. And then, of course, next thing you know,
She's
she's waking
asleep.
up in the morning, and
Yeah.
oh, like the guilt, like
Yeah.
especially like a young child would feel
Yeah.
in that moment is awful.
Yeah.
Um, but like just again, a really smart, subtle change that doesn't impact the scene. It doesn't take away from the scene. If anything, it adds to it.
Right.
Very cool.
Yeah. And then them burying Henry and Sam, and it's just this really somber moment. Like, these were people that were finally friends of a
Mm-hmm.
sort. Like, they've gone so long just traveling together, like after Tess dying and all this stuff. They finally they're like, "Hey, do you want to travel with us?" And
Yeah.
like they're just starting to make friends kind of, and then they have to bury them. And then at the
Also,
end, she,
it's an immediate reminder to Joel of what's
yeah,
at stake here, because he's
right,
like, this could be us, like, but like I could be burying Ellie, and
right.
he's thinking about Sarah and being like, this is maybe a bad idea.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. And then she puts like the writing board on there and it just says, I'm sorry. And oh, dude, it was brutal. That was a
yeah.
brutal ending.
Also, props to Bella Ramsey. One of the like her reaction when Henry kills himself,
Yeah.
like I was
Oh,
like
yeah.
that, her just like her scream of horror and just like the look on her face, I was like, that was acting.
Yeah.
That was like, holy shit, her reaction was so perfect.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I obviously I've never been in a situation where I've had to watch that unfold in front of me, but like
Yeah.
that, everything about her reaction felt completely genuine to me, and and
Yeah.
I had this thought of just like, holy shit, that girl just grew up like that.
Yeah.
Like that
Exactly.
girl's now seen some shit
Right.
that most people will never have to see, and I think she sold that amazingly well.
Yeah. That was a great scene. Okay, cool. So let's talk about episode 6 because obviously this is the one that you and I are just freaking gaga over. I think this is the best episode we've gotten so far.
Mm-hmm.
Dude, this episode was so incredible right from the beginning. Them finding those people out in the woods. I have a
Totally
couple.
new scene too.
Yeah, totally new scene. I have a couple of quotes here that I thought were really funny. The guy says to Ellie, if you got a map, why are you lost? And she says, must have missed all the street signs in the enormous fucking forest.
That was so good, dude.
That was so funny.
The dialogue in this whole episode is on point, and some of it's new, and some of it is ripped right out of the game. But
Yeah.
it was all great.
Yeah. And then he says to Joel says to the guy, he's like, got any advice on the best way to go west? And the guy says, yeah, go east.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Those characters, such a small role. Obviously, we're never going to see them again.
Right.
But like so, just like perfect. Just kind of like a little flourish to the source material that was just, I don't know. It was just great, and this was it was a way to show, because there's been 3 months since Henry and Sam, and we
Mm,
get to see kind of how they've grown together and how they've grown closer and become more comfortable with each other.
right.
They have the rabbits, which is kind of a
Yeah.
little Easter egg. If you remember the beginning of the winter season in the game, the first thing you see is a rabbit getting hit with an arrow.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Okay.
yeah. I'm
Nice.
not sure if that was intent. I mean, I think a lot of it's intentional, even little things like that. But yeah,
Sure.
that was a nice
It's
little homage.
man, it's amazing how many Easter eggs they're able to put in there, man. It's really, really
There's a
good.
lot in this episode. Also, a new element, and you have a note here about it.
Yeah.
Joel's lightheaded. It was a panic attack, I think, is what they were going for.
Okay.
But it happens a couple times in the episode, and that's new.
Yeah.
But I saw a really interesting tweet, because there's a lot of The Last of Us has always been a really great series for representation of all kinds,
Mm.
and you've seen them find new ways of doing this in the show. We had, because Sam was deaf. He was not deaf in the game, so that was
Oh.
new representation. And I saw somebody tweet that was like, I suffer from panic attacks on like a daily or weekly basis or whatever. And
Mm.
seeing a character like Joel, who didn't have didn't suffer from these panic attacks in the game, having them in the show, he was like, in a weird way, I felt represented. And I was like,
Oh.
that's a really kind of a wholesome. Well,
Yeah.
I'm not even sure if they realized that was the kind of thing that was going to happen, but like, it's just like another little layer of representation in the show that I think is really great.
That's cool.
Uh,
So, yeah, what do we cuz I was going to say I don't remember that from the game,
mhm.
but after the episode thing, they were kind of saying like this is kind of a representation of how he's feeling on the inside that we don't really get to see in the game.
Mhm.
And so I think that it's a cool storytelling. At first I was like, what is going on?
I
I
was
don't
like, is he having a heart attack?
yeah.
Like,
I
I
was
was like,
like,
are they gonna, on top of all of this, give him like heart disease? Like, what are you
right.
doing?
Yeah, and so then they keep moving on and Joel says after all this is over, he wants to find a farmhouse and raise some sheep. They're quiet and they do what they're told.
Yep.
I thought that was a great moment.
Great foreshadowing there to the
Yeah.
very end of The Last of Us Part Two, which is a really nice touch. Also, a nice little connection too. He's like in this episode, he's having these panic attacks, and then on the farmhouse in The Last of Us Part Two, Ellie is suffering from PTSD,
That's
uh,
right.
which kind of like uh, emerges in a similar way.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah, and the
Okay.
sheep is one of the things that triggers it for her, which was still also just like
That's right.
one of my favorite moments in that game, just because like they use like just the way they use that little baby sheep to all of a just sudden just at the least at the moment that she least expected it to hit her with just debilitating PTSD
Yeah.
was really clever.
I
But yeah, I just realized I didn't make that connection here, but yeah, panic
I
attack, farmhouse.
I forget how they used the sheep to give her PTSD in that moment, but I remember her having that whole episode
Mm-hmm.
at the farmhouse there. I like that whole scene where you got to just walk around the farmhouse and interact with
Mm-hmm.
a bunch of objects, and
Yeah, it's
that's a
like
cool part of the
that
game.
scene's really cool because like it feels calm and peaceful, and then you're like, oh, why does this sheep wander off on its own? And then she approaches it, and boom,
Yeah,
hits you like a ton of bricks.
right.
And that's kind of from what I hear and from people who have suffered from PTSD, that is can be what it's like
Huh.
to just be suddenly hit with it.
Damn.
Apparently, they did a lot of research on that, and apparently that was very very accurate the way they did it. So
Okay,
it's
cool.
cool to see it pop, and it's also cool them tying in this episode to him like thinking like he thinks he sees Sarah in the square
Yes, that was
because of her.
cool. I
Yeah.
like that. I also like this moment where she's like making this sound and he's like, "What the hell is that?" She's like, "I'm learning how to whistle." And I thought that was so funny because playing through the game, I'm probably right before meeting Henry and Sam, and
Hmm.
that just happened right after the whole Bill
Yeah.
and Frank thing. And in the game, she's like trying to whistle. He's like, "What are you doing?" She's like, "I'm trying to learn how to whistle."
It's
And so
so great seeing
I'm
these
so
little
glad.
moments
Yeah.
being reflected in the show.
Yeah.
Like the same thing like when they first go into the hotel in episode 2 and she walks up to the counter and
Yeah.
she's like ding ding ding,
Yes,
like
hello.
hello, I'd like your nicest room. Like totally
Yep,
right out of the game.
right out of the
And it
game.
was and watching people who have never seen it being like, "Oh, that was really cute." It's like, "Yeah, that was in the game." Like
Yeah.
it's so good. I can't believe it's so good.
It's so awesome.
Also, I think you have a note on it here too. One of my favorite moments, lines from this whole episode was the whole contractors bit. Where
Yes. Oh, dude. And dude, I love that so much because I'm a contractor, like in real life. And so he's like, yeah, everybody loves contractors. And I'm just like, what?
that was so it was like just he's like I'm gonna rewrite history here a little
Yeah.
bit. It's like everybody loves contractors. And then she puts it and then she like rests her head on his back. I was like, oh,
Dude,
oh
yes, that
that's what I'm
moment.
saying. Like this episode goes so far towards selling them as like a unit. Like
Yeah.
you can't have one without the other.
Dude,
Um
this episode was like leaps and bounds for their relationship, and
mhm.
I think that I don't know, I'm on the fence on whether I think it should have happened maybe a little bit earlier or
Mhm.
not, because like this is definitely the episode where you're like, okay, like they are this kind of like duo now, and like
Yeah.
like you really start to feel it in this episode. And so I kind of wish that it had maybe been spread out maybe a little bit more over episode 5. I mean, I guess we did get that episode 4 of them like driving and kind of bonding and doing
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Honestly, I think when we ultimately go back and rewatch it, I do think a lot of these things it's going to feel more fleshed out than we maybe initially picked up on.
Yeah, that's fair.
Um, uh, and they find really because like they are growing their relationship in other ways. Like and there's the scene which we'll talk about where he's talking to Tommy and he's like having this breakdown
Yes.
and he's talking about failure and how he feels like he's constantly failing her and you start to think about it. And this is another thing I kind of picked up listening to that companion podcast, which is why I'm going to sit here and shout praises about it because
Yeah.
like they point out all these little moments throughout the show. Like you may not even think of it as failure, but you could totally
Mhm.
see why he would think of himself as a failure. Because like think about the in the laundromat where that guy got the jump on him, and Ellie ended up having to shoot a guy to
Yeah.
save him
Yeah.
And like he felt like he failed her then. Like he basically forced this 14-year-old girl to kill a man because he
Yeah.
didn't hear him coming up behind him, kind of
Right.
thing. And there's all these little moments where he interprets everything internally as I'm failing her, I'm failing her, I'm failing her, and I'm going to continue failing her until I fail her the last time, and she's going to die, and then
Yeah.
I'm going to be fucked up all over again. And that's
Right.
what he's trying to avoid, obviously.
Yeah. What was he deaf in one ear in the game? Do you remember?
I don't think he was completely. They may have commented on it. I definitely think they drew more attention to it in the show because they were setting up that moment specifically that guy was able to
Right.
sneak up on him.
Right.
Um,
Okay.
but I can't remember if they said that explicitly in the game. If
Okay.
not, that was a really smart way because like
Yeah,
in
I
the
liked
game
it.
he doesn't get like that guy doesn't really get the jump on him, at least not in that specific
Way.
way.
Yeah.
Um, so
Yeah.
if it was a change, it was a smart change.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah, I love that whole trip out to the town that we'll mention in a second. But I just
Mhm.
loved there was so many things on that trip that I was just like, oh, that's a cute moment. Oh, that's a cute
A
moment. Oh, I love.
campfire.
Yeah.
He even considers himself a failure because he fell asleep
Yes.
on watch, and he wakes up, and what's Ellie doing?
She's on
She's
watch.
standing guard, and
Yeah.
like that is just they're starting to trust each other, even if he's not like he feels
Fully
weird
there.
about it.
Yeah.
He's not fully there. He doesn't realize it yet,
Yeah.
but they've made a connection, and she is
Right.
trusting him. He's trusting her. Um, the dog moment had
Yes.
me on the edge of my seat. I
I
was like,
know.
holy shit.
Was that in the game? I can't remember.
No, that was
Okay.
totally new.
Okay.
That was totally new. In fact, you know, the whole Jackson, like
Yes.
everything
Let's
happening in
talk about
Jackson,
that.
yeah, everything that happens in Jackson in the show happens at the dam, which we see a glimpse
Right.
of in the game. And
Right.
that was, I think, due to like budgeting constraints.
I
Obviously, in
I
The Last
like
of Us 2, you go to Jackson.
I like this choice though.
Mm-hmm.
I like that we went to Jackson in the show this early because it'll set up the next season where they're like in Jackson a lot.
Right.
Um,
You hear Craig Mazin talk about it a lot already, where he's saying the benefit we have now of making the show now is that we know more
where it's going.
than like when they were making The Last of Us Part One. They obviously didn't know what was going to come in Part Two, so they didn't get to make decisions. But we get to make decisions, creative decisions now, knowing all of this stuff.
Right.
So going to Jackson seemed like the wise move. And a lot of the stuff that happens outside of Jackson, outside of the dam, now just happens inside of Jackson,
Yeah.
which I think was smart.
Yeah.
Um, and
Yeah.
in
I
fact,
really
what's
liked it.
crazy is this whole episode is for the most part very. It's not action packed. It's it's paced in such a way that it's like watching a drama,
Yeah.
but like the dialogue, the way they kind of like strewn everything together just feels right.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. It's
I was
perfect.
really impressed with how they did all that, and that scene, like I said, where he's kind of telling Tommy about everything and he's
Yeah.
breaking down. Give Pedro Pascal the Emmy, man.
Yeah.
That was
Let's talk about that for a minute. I thought that was an interesting choice because I kind of saw it as, and I could go either way on this. I'm not
mhm.
like stuck on it or anything. But I felt like that was because I don't remember anything like that from the game, and maybe I'm misremembering him feeling this way. Because I remember in the game he does ask Tommy to take her, right?
Yes,
Um,
and Tommy does agree to take her, and then she overhears the conversation, and she runs off, and then
right.
him and Tommy have to get on a horse and like ride out into the woods, and they find her camped out in this like abandoned house, and that's where he has
Oh,
the conversation with her in the bedroom.
right. Okay.
Obviously, she doesn't hear it, and I was like sitting here, I was watching, I was like, how are they going to do this? Like,
Right.
there's like 30 minutes left in this episode. How is she going to run away, and they're going to chase her, and then I'm presuming they're going to get to the university by the end of this episode somehow. Like, how is this all
Right.
going to work out? And they just made some really smart choices. They
Yeah.
honed everything back into Jackson.
Yeah.
Um, and we got to see little glimpses of, I don't know if you saw this, but hashtag was that Dina was trending on Twitter.
Yes, was that Dina? I know I saw that. I was like,
uh,
"What?"
Yeah, and their official response to that, because they mentioned that on the podcast, is it Dina? I don't know. It could be Dina. It might not be Dina, but it certainly could be Dina. And like they're
Right.
being very coy about it. I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure that's gonna be Dina.
Oh yeah,
Because like
for sure.
again, they have the foresight. They know who she is. They know what they can do. They can like I wouldn't be surprised if we actually see Abby in the final episode of this show. And they can do that because they
Ooh.
know what's coming and they can start laying the groundwork now. Like there's already rumors they've cast Abby, and like there's an actress that everybody kind of suspects might be secretly already cast as Abby. Like,
Was Abby at the hospital that night?
yeah, I mean Abby's yeah, in
I can't
the
remember.
yeah, in part 2 she's out there where she's at the zoo and she saves that zebra from the that's tangled up in the
Yeah.
barbed wire, and then she gets word that Ellie and Joel had arrived, and then they rush back to the hospital. And I think that's after all the shit already went to hell, and that's when she kind of
Right.
stumbles in and she finds
That's
her
right.
dad. And knowing all that, they could very easily make her kind of. They may not allude like, "Hey, it's Abby," but they might like
Yeah.
draw attention to her, kind of like they did here, and be
Yeah, with
like,
Dina.
"Is that Dina?"
Is that
Yeah,
Dina?
I think it's a pretty safe bet that that's Dina.
Yeah, for sure. In that same scene, I have this quote here that I thought was really funny, where, they're all kind of sitting down for the first time, all four of them, and they're talking. And
Mm-hmm.
Joel asks Maria to leave because he's like, "Oh, can we just have the family here?" And Tommy's like, "Well, actually, Maria is family."
Family,
And
yeah.
Bella Ramsey just sells this line so good. She says, "Oh shit, congrats, Joel, say congrats." And
Yeah,
he's just like, "Congrats." And
yeah.
dude, you can feel the awkwardness so much.
Yeah. Ooh, that
It's
secondhand awkwardness was
is so good.
yeah.
That
That was pretty good.
was fantastic. Ellie meets a horse and its name is Shimmer. This was her horse in part 2, right?
Yep. And
Shimmer?
if you look in the game or in the show, it's like a younger horse. And
Oh,
there's like a six I think it's like a 5 or 6 year gap between part 1 and part 2, which would make that horse obviously a fully grown horse by the time so
okay.
yeah, that's the horse.
Okay, cool.
I mean, the horse
Nice.
doesn't play a super important role, obviously, other than they say his name is Shimmer, and everybody
Right.
latched onto that, and now we recognize it. But
Right.
it's
Okay.
Shimmer.
So then I have a note about, we talked about this a little bit. The scene with Joel and Tommy in the bar.
Mhm.
So I forgot to say, what did you think of this? I feel like it was almost kind of a deconstruction of Joel. What do you think about that? I felt like it was kind of like Joel wouldn't do that, but maybe I'm wrong.
Well, this is an example of them branching out and trying and changing the character a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, this was my favorite scene of the episode, personally.
Hmm.
I bought into it very specifically because the whole scene is about him just him break because I feel like it's his brother. It's the only person he feels he can tell this to
Yeah.
without exposing himself, metaphorically speaking.
Right.
He just it's like he's venting his anxieties, his inadequacies.
Yeah. That's
He
fair.
I loved the line about when he sleeps he dreams and he doesn't know what it's about, but when he wakes up he just knows he lost something. And
Yeah.
he's basically saying I'm failing this girl so bad that I fail in my sleep.
Yeah.
And
Ooh.
the whole scene is him just like not saying it out loud, not just coming out and saying it, but like being like, I care about this girl like she's my
Mm.
daughter.
Yeah.
And every 5 seconds, I feel like I am failing her, and I
Yeah.
can't do that again. And he's basically saying, I need you to do this for me because if I go down this road, I'm gonna fail her, and I'll never forgive myself.
Yeah.
And just Pedro Pascal's delivery in this scene was, in my opinion, incredible.
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure.
Like
Yeah,
I like
incredible
you're
acting.
right. It's a little bit of it, like the Joel in the game. I don't want to say never, but he would probably not be that exposed. He wouldn't let
Right,
himself be that vulnerable, I guess.
right.
Um, but this was the first. This was maybe the best opportunity for him to stretch his show his acting chops, because
Yeah,
Joel's a pretty
yeah,
straight and narrow, he doesn't
right.
diverge much from the path that he's on. I mean, and Pedro Pascal sells it.
Yeah.
But this was an opportunity to see a totally different side of him that we never really got to see in the game. There
Yeah.
are really touching moments, but like this was like letting loose in therapy,
Yeah.
just pouring your heart out, which we never really get to see in the game.
Yeah.
Uh, I love this as an addition.
Yeah.
I mean, there is a scene that's kind of like this in the game, but it's not
As
him having like,
emotional.
not
Yeah.
him crying, not him like breaking
Right.
down. It's just,
Yeah.
straight and narrow. Like, I need you to take her because fuck this.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, then that leads to the next scene where we get them in the room, and she's like, "Everyone I've ever cared for has either died or left me, except for you." And dude, that
That
moment was
whole
so
scene
good.
that whole scene from the moment he walks into the room to the end of it, with the exception of like one or two lines, is word
Shot
for
for
word out
shot.
of the game.
Yeah.
Shot word for word, shot for shot out of the game. Even this is another really interesting thing they brought up on the podcast was when they were filming that scene, they did it like a bunch of different times, and they were like, I don't think it's quite right yet. And then the take that they ended up using was where she shoved him, where she was like, "Except
Yeah.
everybody, fucking except for you," and she
Yeah.
shoves him. Was just improvisation on Ashley
Yeah.
Johnson's part, and they're like, "That's it." They used it,
Yeah.
and they recreated it here, and they made a good point that like that when she says everybody fucking except for you was completely ad libbed by her, and they used it because of the imperfection. Like nobody
Yeah.
would ever use the fucking using the word
Right.
fucking right there doesn't make any sense. But like
Right. Right.
in the heat of the moment, in the passion of the moment, you could just say something that doesn't sound good.
Right.
That's how people talk.
Yeah.
And like they're like that we could never write that because it just came out in the moment. And the
Right.
fact that they took that shot for shot moment and used it here, it just translated that little ad lib moment
Yeah.
was so it was so good. I was really blown away by that.
Can we just take a moment, a quick moment to just appreciate Troy Baker and Ashley Johnson? I mean, how many things have they done together that have just been absolute bangers? Like BioShock Infinite. Are you a fan of
Mm-hmm.
BioShock Infinite?
I am a fan of BioShock Infinite. I mean, it might not be my favorite BioShock game, but I do like that game. In fact, I've been thinking about replaying that for quite some
Dude,
time.
you should. I bet if you went back to it, you'd be like, this is better than I even remember it being. Because I just played through it again recently. It probably is my favorite BioShock game,
Mm-hmm.
but just I've seen all the behind the scenes stuff with Troy and Ashley like making that game, and oh, it's so good. Like they're so good
Yeah,
together. And I'm trying to think of what else they're together on. I know they work together on a bunch of stuff,
there's
but
also just a lot of really great behind the scenes stuff and filming and doing motion cap for the
yeah,
game. That's just good stuff.
so good. So yeah, Joel changes his mind and takes Ellie to
Another great moment when
yeah.
he's like well, I was gonna leave, but I figured you should at least have a choice. And she doesn't even hesitate, just
Yeah.
boom, just shoves the bag in his chest, and she's like,
She's like,
I
get on the
pick you.
horse. Yeah. Oh, dude, that was so
And it
fantastic.
says so much that she didn't even like, she's like, I don't care all that horrible shit you said to me last night. I
Yeah.
don't care that we were about to be going our separate ways. She's like, all I want is for us to stay together. And like
Right.
that hit me right in the feels.
Yes. Oh my god. It's so good. And then Tommy says, or there's a place for you here, both of you. And Joel's just like counting on it. And
Yep,
it's
that was
like,
good too.
yeah, I love that. I love that.
Something that couldn't exist in the game because they didn't go to
Right.
Jackson in the game, but yeah.
Right. Yep. And then we just get a bunch of stuff. We just get a like just such a fucking great like montage of them just being friends and getting closer. And he's teaching her how to shoot, and they're having
Great moment.
conversations on the road, and they're just becoming like closer and closer. And I wish I had written more. I wish I had written more of those moments down, but there was so many where it's just like,
He tells her he wants to be a singer,
yes,
which is
dude.
also in the game.
Yes,
And
it is.
it also is foreshadowing a lot of some stuff that happens in part two. Um, but like they did a really good job, especially around, because obviously they had to kind of shorten the university sequence quite a bit.
Yeah.
But they did a really good job of like picking out the pieces that, like, they pick out this little piece here from the game and insert it here. It'll fill the gaps. It'll make this scene feel authentic. So they
Yeah.
had the conversation about him wanting to be a singer, and and the monkeys running around in the university stuff. Just like all those little moments, even though they're actually only in the university for a very short amount of time in the game,
Yeah,
in the show. In the game, it's a much bigger like sequence, I guess.
right. Oh, well, speaking of the monkeys, I forgot that that was even in the game. I was like, were the monkeys in the game? Because
Hmm.
I really want the giraffe
Oh,
scene to stick.
they can't not do the draft. It's like one of the most iconic moments of the whole game. If they don't do the draft, this whole show is a failure.
When does that happen in the game? Because I thought that it had already
Right before the
happened.
hospital.
Okay. Okay, cool.
In fact, I'm fairly confident it'll just be part. It'll. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if it's like the very beginning of the last episode,
Yeah, that
because
makes
it's like one
sense.
of the last things that happens before they get to the hospital.
Okay. I was like, dude, they cannot not have the giraffe scene.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
that would be so nuts. But yeah, the facilities are empties, or are empty, but it looks like they've moved to Salt Lake City, so that's where they're headed. But
That's where the
there's
hospital is.
Raiders just down the road.
Yep.
And then yeah, we have this great scene with these Raiders where for a little while they're just like one step ahead, and then they finally collide and Joel gets stabbed, and oh my god, is so
Yeah,
good.
yeah. It was another change from the game because he doesn't get impaled on the
Yeah,
rebar, but like
doesn't he fall in the
yeah, he
game?
falls off a balcony and impales
Yeah,
himself on a piece of rebar. And this game in the show, that's it's he just gets jumped and the guy stabs him with like a piece of broken wood or something.
yeah,
But how he gets injured is not super important. So it added some much needed action. I think a little bit of action to the episode, and it was and some tension at the end. And then of course it culminates in him falling off the horse.
yeah, dude. So let's talk about this specifically for a minute, because this scene, it hit me in such a deep way when it happened. Because and I'm on record in previous episodes of this podcast where I'm like, Bella Ramsey isn't a good actress. Like I just don't like her acting. I don't think she's a good actress. Dude, I was so wrong. She sold this scene so well. When he falls off the horse, you feel like that is her last hope.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
you feel that she feels that she is completely fucked.
yes.
And that comes through so well. And he's not responding, and she's trying to take care of him, and she says, I can't fucking do this without you. And there's nothing else around. It's just her and Joel, and you can feel the tension of,
Feels
because
dire.
yeah, could you imagine being a kid and your parent is supposedly dead on the ground, and you're just like trying to wake them up, in that
And you're out in the
feeling of
middle of
like,
nowhere by your,
you're
like,
like, what do I do? Like, what do
yeah.
I do? And oh my god, that came through. I don't know what they did, like in a cinematography way, but like somehow they conveyed that
It
so
resonated.
well, and I felt it.
They actually revisited too. This was a neat little factoid, I guess they dropped in the podcast, but like they revisited the song that was playing on the radio at the end
Yes,
of the first episode, and the singer in the show, because it's a woman singing, it's
yeah,
a cover.
right.
It's Craig Mason's daughter. So like
Oh,
he was like,
I
it was
thought it
like
might have been Ashley Johnson or something.
no, that would have been a nice touch too. But yeah, it's literally his daughter. So
Oh,
he was
okay.
talking about how this scene meant so much to him because it was like Ellie is mourning Joel, and his daughter is singing the song, and there's just like this nice like parallel of daughter and father and stuff. So it was just a nice like personal touch, I think, to the episode. Obviously, most people aren't going to recognize that, but the song on its own, the
Yeah,
cover is just it was like I instantly recognized it from the
yeah,
first episode,
yep,
and I was like something about the way they layered that music on this scene and the camera's doing
yeah,
that slow pan, and I was just like, ooh, this is,
yeah,
and people are probably losing their minds. And they see
yeah.
preview for next week, and it has nothing to do with this, and
I
they're like, "What?"
know. I wonder how confused people were, because initially when I saw the scene for next week, I was like, "Wait, what is this?" And I'm like, "Oh, this is Left Behind."
Yeah,
And so I wonder how confused people are right now. If
probably a
they
little bit, but
if
it'll
they know
make
it's a
sense as soon
flashback,
as,
yeah,
yeah, it'll make total sense when they get to it. But
yeah,
I'm wondering if like next week, because like in the game, it's kind of like weaving her looking for medicine and bandages for Joel, with her having flashbacks to her and Riley and stuff. And I'm like, I'm wondering if they're going to do kind of the same thing, so that by the end of the episode, we do find out Joel's fate,
Right.
as opposed to like waiting till the next episode. But I don't know.
Yeah.
We're getting close to the cannibals, man. That's
I
all I
know.
know. And
I
I'm
know.
ready.
That's so crazy. Well, yeah, all right. So that's episode 6. I think it's fair to say that, God, you and I love this, man. Like this episode was so good.
It's a good episode.
So good.
This is the one. I mean, a lot of people love episode 3, rightfully so. I mean, I love it. It's a fantastic episode. But like as a last,
Yeah.
that thing could stand on its own.
I know, yeah.
This feels like
The Last of
a
Us.
very important part of The Last of Us.
Right.
And as that, this is without question my favorite episode of the
Yeah.
season so far.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, episode 3 for me, I liked it a lot. I thought the acting was phenomenal all around. The storytelling all around was phenomenal. But I was like, man, we're just spending way too much time with Bill. Like, I would have liked that to have been like
yeah.
half, and then gotten more Joel and Ellie. But I enjoyed my time with Bill and Frank. That was
at least they ended that with the letter that Ellie reads, and the whole thing about like, this is what men like you and me were put here to do. And I was like, that
if
makes
foreshadowing
the whole episode worth it. Like that is giving him his purpose.
Dude, that's exactly what I said when we covered that episode on this podcast. I was like, dude, that letter, for people that haven't played the game, you have no idea, but like, it's so much foreshadowing. Like, find someone you love and kill every motherfucker that gets in your way.
Yep.
Like, dude, let's go.
And Ellie's gonna take that a little too seriously. Man, nice. I'm gonna replay both of these games.
I know.
At least before season 2 starts.
Yes,
I gotta find the time, but they're favorites.
All right, well, let's kind of go into our final thoughts and get you out of here. I know it's late where you're at. Do you think the show, I mean, I guess we've already talked about this at length, actually. Is there anything else that you think the show will change drastically from either of the games?
Drastically? Well, 2 is, I think there's going to have to be major changes to 2, just for the sake of pacing on a television show.
Right.
So that's yet to be seen. There are certain moments from that game that are obvious, like things like the Museum of Natural History with the spaceship flashback was
so good,
amazing, and the Rat King, like there is just a ton. The island, oh my god, there's so many. The aquarium, oh my god,
yeah,
I fucking love The Last of Us too. But like, yes, there will have to be some serious changes made to like just the flow of the story for it to work for a television show, but that's fine.
Right. Yeah.
This, I think we're pretty much on course to finish
perfectly,
basically the same as the game.
Yeah.
With minor, I mean, I do think every episode has found a way to surprise me.
Yeah.
And I think that will continue. Like, we're still got, like I said, I think Ashley Johnson's mom or Ashley Johnson will be Ellie's mom, and we didn't get to see that in the game, so I think that's going to be a major change and probably a highlight.
How do you think she'll come in? Like,
I think she'll probably be in next week. I think she'll somehow be part of the flashback, because in the preview they show scenes of her like at the Fedra school, which we never got to see and stuff. So like, there will be other stuff other than what we see in Left Behind.
Do we know from the games what happens to her mom?
No, I mean, not really. Not outside of what Marlene tells her at the very beginning, which isn't much. So I think that'll be a new addition, and I think there will be new things for the last 3 episodes, obviously. But the major beats, the cannibals, I think is going to play out pretty much the exact same way. And I honestly cannot wait. I think we got a glimpse of the moment when Joel finally reaches her. It's back from if you remember the very first trailer, there's like a moment where he's holding Ellie's face in his hands and he's like, "Are you okay?" And she's like covered in blood. And if you've played the game, I think that's pretty clearly the end of the cannibal sequence, which I can't wait to see play out.
Yeah, see, I wish I hadn't played it so long ago. I can just barely remember anything with the cannibal sequence, so I can't even exactly remember what that's referencing.
Well, get ready, because it's pretty good. And then like that final episode, I don't know what is going to change dramatically, but the major story beat that has to happen is going to happen, and that's, I don't know. Yeah. I think that might ultimately be like maybe the safest episode of the season, and just in terms of like not diverging much from it. Maybe I'm wrong. As long as they do the giraffes, man, that's all I care about. They got
Yeah,
to do
the
the giraffes.
giraffes for sure.
But it's like this adaptation has been so true to the story.
It's
I
been
can
so
tell
good.
I can tell you what the final shot of the entire season is going to be with almost certainty, and we all know what it's going to be, which is them standing on the hill
Yep.
talking, and he lies, and she says okay, and then cut
Oh,
to black, and it's gonna be good.
it's so good. I cannot wait. I cannot wait to see that in live action. Oh my
Yeah,
god, you just got me so hyped.
that's what I do.
Nice. All right. Well, on that note, I guess we'll wrap it up. Nick, seriously, thank you so much for hanging out for as long. Like you stayed way longer than I ever expected you to.
Oh,
Thank you
no
so much for
worries.
hanging out and talking Last of Us with me. And uh,
Anytime.
I've been wanting to talk to you for so long, just because I know we both love Dexter and whatnot. So this was fantastic. I do have one final question for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that. Where did you get that?
What?
The N64 thing behind you.
Oh, oh, an ex-girlfriend got it for me for my birthday like
Oh,
10 years ago.
is it
And
foam or what is it?
no, it's like a heavy ass, like it's I think she got it on Etsy or something, like some artist that
Oh,
there's also like a PlayStation 1 uh end table that's kind of the same way, but that thing is heavy as hell.
oh,
It's
cool.
solid wood, and then I just got like a piece of glass to sit on top of it. Yeah.
Oh, sick. That's awesome. I've been staring at that the whole time. I'm like,
Oh,
where did he get that?
yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm
It's
pretty
super
sure
cool.
I'm pretty sure she found it on some artist that does that kind of thing on Etsy. But
Okay.
yeah, that was a long time ago. I don't know if it's still available, but
Yeah. Okay, for sure. All right, man. Well, again, thank you. Thank you for hanging out. I would love it if you're interested, I would love it if you came back for episode 9 when we do like the finale of all this. Like if you
I'm
want
pretty
to.
sure I could be convinced. Yes.
Okay, cool. Awesome. All right, guys. Well, that is going to wrap us up there. Thanks so much for hanging out with me and Nick. I'll have all his stuff linked in the description so you can give him a follow if you'd like to. Let us know what you think of The Last of Us so far by commenting on the video here or reaching out on Twitter or Discord, linked below in the description. You can also check out our main channel linked below if you're interested in fantasy and sci-fi book discussion and author interviews and that kind of thing. And we'll be back later with episodes 7 and 8 of The Last of Us. And we also have some anime content on the way, as well as a couple other things that are in the works. So hit that subscribe button if you're intrigued, and we'll see you next time on the Fantasy Files Reacts.
Yeah.
Sweet.